What's up guys, MrBayeasy here, and today we're going to be covering the summary and analysis of the Hunt the Truth audio series, Episode 10, Gag Order. Sadly, this episode doesn't have as much action or intensity as the last, but what it lacks in thrill, it makes up for in information. So with that being said, let's get started. This episode gets kicked off with Ben in a very nervous and panicked state of mind. He quietly sits in the dark, hoping that what they had done in the previous episode would have profound negative effects towards O&I. Once the introductory detailing had been explained, he briefly touched on feeling guilty about Mishak possibly getting intercepted by O&I. But then Ben moves on to his current situation. He describes the terror he was feeling as he hid away in the darkness.
I'd been holed up here for days. Darkness brought nightmares, so I'd stopped sleeping in it. Nighttime was work time. I'd memorized the sounds the building made, the breeze shushing down the stairwells, the click of the cooling system's hibernation mode, the scurrying of rats in the walls. Anything else and I would instantly black out my display, crawl beneath the window and wait on high alert until the sounds and shadows normalized again. I tried to remind myself, if anyone came, they'd hit the tripwire. I'd have 5 seconds to hide. But every bump was a footstep. Every howl was a voice, and everything in me told me someone was inside the building. I wasn't going to wait for the tripwire. I slid over to the loose panel on the floor. Beneath it, there was a narrow space. I squeezed into the gap and closed myself in. No matter how hard it stormed, no matter who came for me, no one would find me here. Waiting in the dark. That was the hard part. But spending the night under the floor was the best sleep I'd gotten in weeks.
When Ben awakes, he goes over some of the fallout data from his most recent escapades against O&I. He settles on a particular senator named Andrew Del Rio, whose political viewpoints heavily favored negatively targeting the Master Chief based on what happened on Biko.
The Master Chief stormed an assembly of peace activists and began to gun people down. Now, I'm sorry, but the Spartan 2s are fundamentally flawed and dangerously outdated. But we just keep bleeding taxpayers dry. Well, now we're seeing the real cost. There is a reason you'll never see a video of a Spartan 4 attacking civilians or murdering heroes. I can vouch personally for the character of each and every Spartan 4 as warriors and as people. If we fail to decommission the Spartan 2s, there will be more Bikos, and there will be more massacres. Nobody wants to say it, but damn it, somebody has to. In the name of decency, it's time to tear down that statue and put down the Master Chief.
Ben is so infatuated with the senator's speech that his senses were momentarily dulled and he didn't hear the noises that were coming from outside. When he hears the tripwire get activated, his mind goes to the worst case scenario and believes that O&I has finally found him. However, the frustrated voice angrily fumbling around in the dark seems familiar. Much to Ben's surprise, it turns out to be Ray, who like always, comes bearing gifts of useful information. This information in particular is in direct contradiction of what is believed to have happened on Biko, as well as the Master Chief's involvement in the entire ordeal.
Ray had been listening, and a few days ago, he'd hit on an exotic frequency going somewhere it shouldn't. The Sangheili, the alien race from the Biko peace talks, had sent an official transmission to UEG servers on Earth the day after the leaks. And on their end, the government had buried it deep.
That's the Sangheili clan leader saying they had nothing to do with the massacre. And the demon wasn't responsible either.
And neither did the demon. Why do you sit silent while your people demand unjust blood?
He's making it sound like Biko's lusting for vengeance.
Huh? No, I've been looking at Biko for days. Look, it's totally peaceful there.
Exactly. I did some checking, though. That feed is an old loop. The outer colonies are mostly cut off from us, but someone's cut Biko off from everybody. Nobody outside Biko knows what's happening there. And it's ugly. Protests, riots, martial law. But since the funerals, not a single prominent figure on Biko has said a word about any of it.
At least not in public. Off the record, Robbie's embassy contacts were livid. Sakibo's people wanted to make a statement, clear the Sangheili, but they couldn't. The magistrate, Laurel Adams, had silenced the leadership and the media. Nobody was talking.
How does she have the authority to do that?
She doesn't. Adams is a puppet. The gag order came from Earth.
The UEG? Why would they squash the massacre? To protect the chief?
Nope. To cover their own asses.
This is where it gets a tad complicated. So apparently there was a massive security threat that was detected 1 week before the peace talks were scheduled to happen. When Ambassador Sakibo asked the UAG for help, he was automatically rejected. So despite their discomfort with the situation, they were forced to continue with the talks. However, despite this order of silence being in place, Sakibo's people couldn't stand idly by while Master Chief was made the scapegoat for this atrocity. They went behind Magistrate Adams' back and underwent their own investigation, only to find out that the likely suspect was a group of extremists known only as Sapien Sunrise. The theme of this group being anti-species integration. Upon further digging, they were able to determine that the so-called civilians who were killed in the Biko raid actually had ties with Sapien Sunrise, as well as several guards attending the meeting. The plot went so deep that even the ambassador's own personal bodyguard was found having ties to this hate group. What is extremely important to note is that upon entering the meeting, Master Chief initially targeted Sakibo's bodyguard as he was the closest to him and therefore posed the most immediate threat. If this was a random shooting spree to just get the alien delegation to safety, then why would he target that person in particular upon entering the room? This is at least circumstantial evidence that Chief more than likely knew about this plot to assassinate the ambassador. Even more compelling is that there was evidence that Master Chief didn't actually kill any innocent civilians that day, just the members of Sapien Sunrise. And all of this was supposedly on another video clip separate from the one released to the masses. The only problem was all the evidence was somewhere on Biko, and that was completely cut off.
Sakibo's office had been trying to forge a better world in a region of space where very little is black and white. They'd asked for help, and while the UEG refused to even read their request, the Master Chief had shown up. His ship entered their atmosphere so fast, air traffic AI registered it as a fireball. He neutralized heavy combatants hiding behind civilians, and there wasn't a drop of innocent blood on his hands. He got Sakibo and all but 3 of the Singili to safety. The only thing the chief couldn't do was keep Richard Sakibo's heart beating. But in reality, without that second video, or coroner's reports to clear the chief, without documentation of UEG negligence, I had nothing. I could already see it falling to pieces before my eyes.
Ben thanks Ray for coming out to deliver this information, and Ray mentions that he needs a favor. His parents were actually on Biko, and considering no one could get through, he was worried. He asked Ben if he could call Petra and see if she had heard anything, and naturally, Ben said yes.
Ben, listen, I'm glad you called, actually. I have a lead for you.
What?
It popped up a couple days ago, and I've been sitting on it, debating whether to give it to you or
Petra.
delete it, or it's from someone I trust, and
Petra, I don't need a handout, okay? If you want
Ben,
the lead,
I don't want it. I didn't know if I want to be responsible for having given it to you, but I know you need it. Here.
I opened the package. Coordinates. Some sector on the outskirts. Underneath was a 72-hour window. It started soon. I looked up the location. It was on Bliss.
I'm not sure what you'll find there. Maybe a server
But
or...
a server on a glassed planet?
I don't know, okay? Maybe it's a mass grave. All I do know is it's an anomaly. They don't know about it, and for 72 hours there will be a security lapse where no one's watching. And that is a hard clock, Ben. You have to get in and out within that window. You understand?
Yeah, okay.
Ben, this is a once-in-a-lifetime shot. Somebody risked their life to get me those 72 hours, and I need to know that you're going to be...
I'm sorry. No, I appreciate that. I'm in. I'm gonna do it, okay? Thank you.
Okay. That's your ride. As a look at Freighter. Leaves tonight. Bring your piggy bank. Everything you've got. These people only speak bribe, and they're not easily impressed.
Really quickly, before we continue, I want to note that after this conversation took place, I felt extremely suspicious that she was waiting for him to call, but even more so that she provides him with a ride to a planet that supposedly doesn't have security for a fairly significant duration of time. It just felt fishy to me, like there might not be any ride at all, or at the very least, someone will be waiting for Ben when he arrives on that planet. After all, it is glassed, so it wouldn't be inhabited by anyone. and theoretically it would be the perfect place to make someone disappear. Knowing he will need supplies for such a journey, Ben heads back to his apartment. However, upon reaching his destination, he knows that stapled to his building's door is a sign from the city that reads, "Unfit for human habitation," as if there is some form of quarantine. Considering he still had his key, he let himself in, and immediately noticed that all of his neighbors' doors leading down the hall to his apartment were opened. If this wasn't weird enough, as he walks down the hallways, he peers into their apartments and notices that not a single one has anyone in it. But even more strange is that they have all been completely covered in plastic. As he reaches the end of the hallway and comes up on his apartment, he notices that his door is the only one that isn't open.
I pushed it open, and my guts collapsed inside of me. Everything was gone. The entire apartment had been gutted.
There's nothing.
Everything, down to the light fixtures, the appliances, the cabinetry. They'd pulled up all the flooring, stripped all the trimming, ripped out all of the plumbing. All of it was just gone, without any hint that it had ever been there in the first place. As a breeze moved in through the gouged out sockets where my windows had once been, I realized it had gotten dark. The monster had been here. It had come inside my home. And now everything I had been completely erased.
Alright guys, that wraps up this week's Hunt the Truth episode 10, Gag Order. Like I said, although this was without a doubt creepy, it didn't really hold as much action as the previous two episodes. However, I believe that next week's episode will be extremely eventful. Good job to those of you that predicted that the slaying at the peace talks was actually to thwart some form of evil plot as well. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and don't forget to rate the video what you think it deserves. If you'd like to become a sage in training, make sure you subscribe today. And as always, this has been MrBayeasy, your favorite sage, and I'll see you in the next video.